Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How's everyone doing? Pretty good? Okay, y'all aren't giving me the energy that I expected, but that's all right. Okay, so just as a show of hands, how many of you in the audience today can say positively, 100%, without a doubt, that you had an adult figure in your life to help you become the person that you are today? Okay, that's a fairly nice amount of hands, exactly what I expected. I also can say that I'm in that number. So, um, on this slide, as you can see, there's an image of two little black children. Now, one of those children is, of course, me. The image shown here is a picture of myself and my brother right before we were adopted. I was adopted at the age of 6. My brother was adopted at the age of 5. And so what happened is we were brought out of a terrible situation and into an even better situation. My mother was an addict, and so you can see why that situation wouldn't be beneficial for a child to be in those conditions. It wasn't until very later on that I would truly understand the impact that adoption would have on my life. And it would emphasize me becoming a better person by the people that I was surrounded by and the support systems that I would have to encourage me throughout this journey. In addition, about 4 years ago, give or take, I was blessed to have an interaction with a 17-year-old girl on the way to Schlitterbahn. And while in the car, she was engaged in a conversation with her foster care parent. And so the conversation went a little something like this. The girl stated, "I can't wait until I'm 18 when I'm ready to go out and move into the world on my own." Now, as a 13-year-old, even at that time, this kind of shocked me. But as I stand here today, a 17-year-old about to go out into the world myself, I can't imagine saying I'd be ready to go out into the world at 18 and just be prepared like she was. And so with that, I was kind of confused as to why she felt prepared for the world. And I was also kind of confused as to why she was dealing with the issue of aging out at such an early age. And so what I found is that this is the reality for many teens within the foster care system. They don't get that experience like myself and my brother got at a young age. They don't get that opportunity. Instead, they have to deal with the real world. They age out. And so that is simply the fact of the foster care system, which I'm attempting to point out today. And so with that, as the fact exists, the adoption rates of infants and younger children in comparison to teens and older children displays a discrepancy. And so from this discrepancy, what happens is that aging out in the United States is more prevalent than adoption is in the United States. As of 2017, there were 248,000 children who were exited out of the foster care system. Now, this number is in comparison to 59,400 children who were in fact adopted. Now, as you can see, that is a 4 times difference between the number of children who were adopted and those that were exited out. Now, even if we were to take a small percentage of that number and just simply assume that that would be a percentage of teens, these numbers would be even more troubling. Because what they're showing us is that something is not being performed effectively within that system. Something is not being done to make sure these teens are getting adopted and that they need that, and that they have that positive support system that they require. And so, from this, it prompted me into looking at something else. It prompted me to looking at how teens might respond to their being overlooked within the foster care system. And so I had to have a guiding question for this research. And that guiding question was, what are the effects of modern American society influencing the perspectives of adoptive parents when preparing to adopt? And so as those perspectives follow, these are based off of simply stereotypes. Now, when you think of television, entertainment, social media, there's typically, as I like to put it, 4 adjectives that define the cliched use of a teenager. These involve ill-mannered, narrow-minded, rebellious, and bratty. You rarely get teenagers highlighted in a positive light. Instead, it is more common to see them highlighted with these 4 adjectives. And so just assuming that I'm an adoptive parent, why would I choose a child that embodies those 4 characteristics when I could choose a younger child that would be easier to adapt to? In addition, that would be easier for me to rear because they are not as steeped in their tradition. And so that is the mindset that I interpreted from this research. As well, I wanted to see, and as well with that, we see that because of those viewpoints, this results in that eventual aging out and those teens having to deal with life on their own. Now, in comparison to teens who aren't in the foster care system, because they do have that support system, because they do have those families, they have someone that they can always lean on. They have someone that they can always go to. However, this is not the case for many teens within the foster care system. They don't get that privilege. They don't get that experience. They don't get that opportunity. According to Child Crisis Arizona, approximately each year within the United States, 24,000 teens age out. The results of this aging out prove to be even more detrimental. When looking at it more in depth, you find that 54% of these teens will go on to earn their high school diploma. 1/5 will be incarcerated, will be homeless, that is, within a year. 1/4 will be incarcerated within a year. 71% of the women will be pregnant by age 21. 3% will earn a bachelor's degree, and 50% will be unemployed by age 24. Now, what this shows is that you have an influx of citizens who aren't truly prepared to make a difference within the world. They're not taught to lead. They're not taught to perform effectively as citizens, but rather they are pushed off without those necessary skills that they need to succeed. And so, with this, I had to have some evidence to prove the true effectiveness of adoption. So what I decided to do is conduct a research method. And that research method involved this. I chose to implement narrative research. And narrative research basically allowed me to contact each of the individuals that I needed to contact and talk to them individually about their experiences. And so with each of these individuals, there was a series of questions that I asked them. And the questions were they were designed to assess how each of these teens might have felt regarding those perceptions of those adoptive parents, and how knowing that those perceptions existed might have impacted that teen, whether it be emotionally, psychologically, physically, etc. It was based on how that teen wanted to define it. And so from this, we have the first question. The first question I asked them was simply, how did you act during your adolescence? The second question was, do you feel that there is a discrepancy between the adoption rates of infants and younger children in comparison to adolescents and older children? And the third question was, do you feel that there is a misrepresentation in the United States of teens as a whole? And the fourth question was, do you feel that there's been a halt in the adoption of teens based on those negative perceptions of teens? And so I got what I like to call a sequence of results. So each of the individual questions had a result that kind of led into the next question. And so for the first question, I had 3 of the 4 teens that I interviewed respond with, yes, they did feel that their behavior has been a bit reckless in their adolescence. While I only had 1 respond with, no, they feel that they have been more well-behaved. And so what this evidence shows is that teens, of course, can identify with their imperfections. They can identify with their flaws, which may be a shocker, but we can. And so for the next question, in terms of that showing the discrepancies, all of these teens stated, yes, of course. They saw that there was a discrepancy. They saw that there was a difference between those adoption rates of infants and younger children in comparison to teens. Now this, I'll touch on a little bit later, but it identifies something that's crucial and that I feel was something that needed to be addressed. And so for that third question, in terms of misrepresentation, these teens, of course, stated, yes, that they felt that there was something that was being taken from society that wasn't truly implementing or highlighting how these teens were on a positive light. They weren't being highlighted in that manner. Instead, they were being looked at from the biases and from the perspectives of those negative teens that came before them. And so for this question, those teens felt they weren't just being holistically interviewed, but instead those biases came into factor. And so simply for the fourth question, in terms of halts in adoption, of course, all of these teens also responded with yes, misrepresentation does affect those that have basically done nothing. They have done nothing. They say that their actions are reckless, but as a whole, they don't feel that their actions truly define them. And so as a result, they are punished because of the actions of others. But the fifth and final question that I would ask them, even in spite of all the evidence that shows that teens know that they're difficult to accommodate, and they know that they have a realization for the foster care system, that fifth and final question emphasizes the true nature of why adoption is important. it shows that teens have a realization of why they need a support system, why they need that family. And so that fifth and final question that I asked these teens was, do you feel that adoption has helped you in your life? And so, as a result, those benefits of adoption showed that all of these teens, in fact, responded with yes. They did feel that adoption had played a major factor in their lives in making them the person that they are today. It was evident that these teens knew that because they were adopted, they were made a better person than they were if they would have been in the situation that they were before then. I myself can also say this. I was made a better person because I was adopted and because I was given that opportunity of life that I may not have been given if I had stayed where I was. And so, as you can see, if teens can identify with the effectiveness of being adopted, why can't anyone else? Where does the closed-mindedness set in? Teens understand they need a home, but why doesn't anyone else? What can we do to address this issue? Well, guess what? That's what I'm on the stage for. And so, with that being said, one of the major ways I feel that we can make an impact is that the foster care system and adoption agencies truly represent these teens in a manner that depicts who they really are. These teens should be shown in a positive light. Rather than focusing on those negative stereotypes that they've been given constantly, there should be something that highlights the true nature of who they are, in addition to highlighting what will happen if they're allowed to age out. In addition, you can highlight even the impact that a family can have on that teen. Take the example of Sabrina Board and the Waterses. And so what happened was, Sabrina was an 11-year-old girl who had a temper, and she liked to run away. But that did not stop her adopted family from continuing to love her, welcome her in, and support her, even in spite of all the struggles that they dealt with her. And so what happened was, after that, when Sabrina became a mother, she truly understood the sacrifices that her family had made for her. She understood the impact that they had had on her life, and she came back and she thanked them because of all that they had done for her. In addition, for you in the audience, I want you to consider this: an understanding of adolescence. It is a stage that is crucial to the development of that individual. It is not based on those well, it might be a little bit, but those four characteristics that I stated earlier are just a minor facet of what this stage truly represents. The person that individual is right now, the experiences that they go through, some of those will transition as they continue to grow and develop in their later lives. And so all I'm asking you to do is simply remain open-minded and understanding and supportive of that individual as they continue to grow and develop. Now, with this, I would like to leave you with the final thought. The heart receives great pleasure from reaching down and lifting someone up. Humans as a whole, we need each other. We rely on each other. We cooperate, we coordinate, we help each other. In order for us to effectively perform as a society, no individual must be left behind. Each individual should be able to perform to the best of their capabilities, and each individual should be prepared for a world that is harsh and unforgiving. And so with that, if you get nothing else from this presentation, if you go home and take nothing away from it, I simply want you to understand this. To put it simply, don't forget about the teens. Thank you.